As we gather and settle into our seats, our crew here is going to offer a couple songs before the event starts. We've chosen these songs. The first is a Moravian folk song from the Czech Republic, and the second is a Scots Gaelic song. Both of them are used in purpose to gather people in community, and as well as to work alongside each other and synchronize our efforts. Muzikantico dielate, muzikantico dielate, hai mate husle, anerate, hai mate husle, anerate. Zarete mnie na muzički, zarete mnie na muzički, aj rozerte, te družičky, aj rozerte, te družičky. Zarete mě na cymbále, zarete mě na cymbále, jak moja milá, veselá je, jak moja milá, veselá je. Zarete mě na trovasu, zarete mě na trovasu, aj rozerte, že sluchačku, aj rozerte, že sluchačku. Zarete mě před přískolou, zarete mě, že přískolou, aj neprohoďte, me až domů, aj neprohoďte, me až domů. Muzikantico děláte, muzikantico děláte, aj máte husle, a děláte, aj máte husle, a děláte. Zarete mě na husíčky, zarete mě na husíčky, aj rozcerte, ty družičky, aj rozcerte, ty družičky. Zarete mě na cymbále, zarete mě na cymbále, jak moja milá, veselá je, jak moja milá, veselá je. Zarete mě na trovacu, zarete mě na trovacu, aj rozcerte, že sluchačku, aj rozcerte, že sluchačku. Muzikantico děláte, muzikantico děláte, aj máte husle, a děláte, aj máte husle, a děláte. Zarete mě na husíčky, zarete mě na husíčky, aj rozcerte, ty družičky, aj rozcerte, ty družičky. Zarete mě na cymbále, zarete mě na cymbále, jak moja milá, veselá je, jak moja milá, veselá je. Zarete mě na trovacu, zarete mě na trovacu, aj rozcerte, že sluchačku, aj rozcerte, že sluchačku. Zarete mě na cymbále, zarete mě na cymbále, aj neprohoďte, ne až domů, aj neprohoďte, ne až domů. Thank you. Wow, I'm like totally in awe right now to be in a room full of human bodies singing and playing music in a room of people. I can't. I'm just gonna thank you again. Share and receive. Oh my goodness. Yeah, try not to cry. Really, or maybe I will. This next song we'd love to sing for you is a Scots Gaelic song. And this is a song women would have sung together while they were preparing the cloth used on these giant sail ships that would sail from the coast of Scotland all the way down to Jamaica, pick up a little rum, brandy, and bring it back up, the schooner ships. And so while women were getting the cloth ready and making it soft and pliable for these ships, they would sing songs with each other to make the work go by, to support each other and make it a little easier. And the lyrics that we'll be singing say things like, "Oh, did you hear about the wife of Loudy? She got drunk on all that rum he brought home from Jamaica," you know. So if we were going to sing this song, here in Ashland, it might be something like, "Did you see that guy at the co-op? I think that he likes you, oh yeah," or like, "I just got some noble coffee and I'm really ready to work now." Whatever our local versions of the stories in our town and the stories of the people, they would sing to each other and make each other laugh and make the time go a little faster.
believe it, and we do owe an apology. Many of you were here in February 2020. That was our last Hearth event. We had all kinds of free drinks. It turns out someone did put something in the drinks, and many of you may have experienced a loss of 2 years. And a lot of weird dreams, moments when you were standing, staring in a corner. Star Trek kind of thing. You were talking to people on screens. Anyways, you're okay. It'll be okay now. And we're just serving water tonight to make sure everyone's okay. Wow, it's so crazy to be back here at the Hearth, and I think I'm noticing that we have the building sound on here. Is anybody else noticing that? Yeah, so I don't know if it's possible
They're looking into it.
Susanna or Wendy or someone to talk to whoever's in charge of it. And that's it. All you do is ask Susanna and Wendy, and they take care of it like that. By the way, let's have a big hand for our operations director, Susanna Cole. And let's thank our volunteers. Can you believe they got the bright new jackets sitting out there, the whole green crew. Big hand for our volunteers tonight. We've got cookies from the high school. That's right. So it's possible we may lose another 2 years. Maybe drugging. But they're only $1 tonight. So we're grateful to them. So great to be back together. You know, we've had this incredible, tumultuous time. We're not out of it yet, and we will never be out of it. We're just going to be in this for a while. We're at the end of some kind of story on this planet, and we're in between stories. We don't know what's coming next. And we're learning. Yeah, it's coming. Something new is coming. And one of the ways we find what's coming next is we start the house music again. So we have that house music, then it's going to be okay. It's just like being in an elevator. So the Hearth is a night where we practice community. Some of us do that by setting up chairs, some of us by working out in the parking lot, some of us by playing music, and others by telling stories. It's a time when we try to get together in the same space. We haven't been allowed to do that. And with other neighbors. And we have 6 local people tell a true story from their own life in about 10 minutes. And, you know, story is this practice that every human brain knows how to do. And when we listen to stories, we get transported through time and space into the experience of another human being. We get the opportunity, it's a sacred act, really, to see as others see, to hear as others hear, and to feel as others feel. The great writer Barry Lopez once said that, and he learned this from indigenous people up in the north. They told him, an authentic story is a story that's about us. And an inauthentic story is a story that's just about me. And what happens at the Hearth is authentic stories. These stories, if you listen carefully, you will hear yourself or find yourself in some of the stories that you hear tonight. And so the way this works is, in a little bit, our wonderful musicians here, brought together by Megan Danforth, will come up and they'll play a song. Then we'll have 3 storytellers, and they'll each go about 10 minutes. Daniel Sherrill is here. He'll play a song. We'll take a break, come back, have another song, 3 more storytellers, and then a song, and that'll be our evening. And so this is a chance for all of us to kind of listen for what's being asked of us at this time. And the theme is Frontline stories. Frontline stories. I don't know what you were like in school. Maybe you were the one who sat in the back of the classroom, back of the church, back of the car. But all of us have moments when we're invited to the front. Moments when we're brought to the front. I remember being in college. My roommate, if you paid attention to some of the stories I've told, was my brother, my future brother-in-law, Jack. He's here tonight. And I had pulled into our little school parking lot, the apartments where we lived, and all of a sudden I noticed there was smoke coming out of the engine. I lifted the hood and the battery was on fire. And so being a person who stays calm in situations like this, I started running and yelling towards our apartment. And I flung open the door and I said, "My car's on fire, my car's on fire." And Jack, who was just sitting, studying, stood up ran into the kitchen, grabbed baking soda, ran out to the parking lot and started dousing the fire. He ran towards the fire. Right? Frontline. Frontline move. And we're living in an age where there's all kinds of fires emerging, both those that literally have hit our valley, as well as those that start burning on the inside of us, that happen between relationships, that are happening in our politics and in our culture, that are happening in debates about vaccines and science. All these fires. And there are some of us who, in particular moments, feel called to run towards the fire, to run towards those who are hurting, to run towards the need. And we all have that capacity within us, that capacity to respond when the emergency is articulated. That suddenly we realize deep down, beneath all the ways we're hypnotized in this culture, deep down there's a desire to serve something larger than me, to serve something true, to serve something good, to serve something that will heal. Leonard Cohen, the great poet, singer-songwriter, one of the last interviews he had, he described this out of his own faith tradition, the Jewish tradition. There's a word, hineni, which means here I am. Here I am. And in that tradition, it's the phrase that Moses says to God, it's the phrase that Isaiah says to God, here I am. And it's not about a place, it's about a readiness within yourself that he believed was in every human being. Here's what he said about that. He said, there's a declaration of readiness no matter what the outcome that's a part of everyone's soul. We all are motivated by deep impulses and deep appetites to serve, even though we may not be able to locate that which we are willing to serve. So this is just part of everybody's nature, to offer oneself at the critical moment when the emergency becomes articulate. And it's only often when the emergency becomes articulate that we can locate that willingness and that desire to serve. So tonight, we're honoring that by having 6 souls, 6 regular folks. These are not performers, these are not professional speakers, these are everyday folks who ran towards the fire in their own way, who ran towards the need. 6 frontline people. And they're going to come up and they're going to tell their story, their experience, and they're going to offer that gift of their experience, and we're going to offer the gift of attention and listening, and that will be our night. And what's so sweet about this evening is all the money we donated at the door will go to they went to a branding company to find this name, to find something that was just clever and easy to remember. It's the Jackson County Community Long-Term Recovery Group. That's where money goes to tonight. They can hire some marketing. And so they're working to help work with those who have struggled through the fire. We also have my colleague who has just transitioned to her own nonprofit that she's started, Coalición Fortaleza. Erica Ledesma is here. She's working on housing in our valley. I'm so glad Erica's here tonight. Come and talk to her about what she's doing. So, a few things, business items. Make sure you turn off your phones, any noise-making devices. And I think we're ready. So, Meek, would you come up and introduce folks and lead us into this evening with a song? I already appreciate the music earlier tonight. Thanks for these beautiful folks coming up to play us in.
Thank you so much, Mark. This is an original song of this group that I've had the pleasure of joining for the purposes of our gathering tonight. Cerise and I sing in a trio called Wild Honey, and one of our honeys has been on Wanderabout for a while, and so it's we've been on our own hiatus, and so it's been such a pleasure to come together and prepare this for you. This song is about slowing down, and we thought it would be just perfect to initiate us into that receptivity to hold all these stories that we're going to listen to. My beloved sister and friend Megan shared a podcast with me by Trisha Hersey. She is the founder of something called the NAP Ministry. Doesn't that sound good? And the point of her ministry is that especially those that are at the front line, especially those that go running and giving so much to the need to rest, need to take in nourishment, eat good food, sleep as much as possible, in order to serve from a place of hineni, as Mark was just saying, a place of here I am connected, I am in service. And I'm ready for the NAP ministry myself. And this song is called Slow Down. And I wrote this with Stefan when I was about to move here to Ashland from the Bay Area. The hustle and the bustle and the 100 jobs I had and the fast pace of life and driving everywhere at top speed. You know Aharon, remember that? Aharon just moved up here from the Bay Area too. Because sometimes you just heed the call when you see those green hills out there and you're like, you know, I could just slow down. Letting go of solid ground, make myself dizzy, spin around, off kilter, not built for the speed of this sea. I've been running for so long, sure in ways it's made me strong. Along the way I have been graced by the people and the places, the hustling and the shuffling of the myriad of faces. All leave traces on my soul, but now I need to slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. You can learn that, right? Slow dropping in for a minute, just to let myself begin to get to know who you are, to come to be your friend, and we'll be lovers of it all. As we watch this life unfold, won't need to worry anymore. And this is what we came here for. Slow down, slow down. I can't hear you. Slow down, yeah, let's slow down. if you never take the time to be, to breathe, to fly. Oh, it really is that soft to smell the roses. I only know it when I'm really dust. Slow down, slow down, slow down, yeah. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Take a deep breath. Slow down. This world needs you to be right here, right now. Take a deep breath and slow down. This world needs you to be here, right now, right now. Slow down, slow down, slow down,
Our first storyteller is Randy Nash. She's a first and second grade teacher at John Muir Outdoor School here in Ashland. Growing up, she lived in Berkeley, California, Corvallis, Petaluma. She enjoys running long miles, fly fishing, stand-up paddleboarding, climbing peaks, and road biking. She's always dreamed of becoming a teacher and is here to share her journey of that adventurous road. Brought her here today. Randy.
Hi, everybody. Before I start my story, I'd like to welcome you all in joining me in what I start my class with every day, and that is heart breathing. It's a way to check in with our inner weather report before we start our day, and we take 3 deep breaths, and I would love if you all joined me in that before I begin. I'll count for us. Thank you. It's a Friday evening, April 2020, and at the time I lived in a 200 square foot cottage, my bed in one corner and my kitchen in the other, and I'm about to log on to Zoom for the first time to host a Q&A with all of my students' parents. And I'm just pacing, like, oh my goodness, I've never even logged into Zoom. And here we go. Most vulnerable moment of my life. And I log on, and I have 25 parents staring at me. And I reassure them of all the learning we're going to continue to do. And I'll still record myself reading Charlotte's Web, and we can do hard things. And I'm thinking to myself, whew, I'm the captain of this ship, and I'm not sure where it's headed. but I'm the captain and we're gonna do this. And I reassure them that we got this and we can do hard things. And I close my computer that night and I think to myself, whew, can I do hard things? Can I really do this? Like, whew, all right, I can do hard things. There's a picture of me, probably at age 4. I'm sitting and I have this big book in my lap and I just have the biggest smile on my face. And I'm wearing this like adorable ruffled white dress and I'm just like so ready to learn at such a young age. I would even line up my American Girl dolls and stuffed animals and teach them, and they were really good listeners. And I always wanted to be a teacher. It was my biggest dream and hope. And unfortunately, learning did not come easy for me. I remember when my parents told me I was going to be held back in the 2nd grade. They proposed it as an opportunity to help the other kids. And really the truth is I couldn't fully read until the 5th grade. And my high school classes were full of reviewing letter sounds and comprehension skills.
Good.
And my dream of becoming a teacher just continued to feel so far away. And my story isn't one of those inspiring stories based off that one teacher or that guidance counselor or maybe that one leadership class. My inspiration came from my family. Every day at school drop-off, my dad would say, "Have a great day, grow up and be president." And my mom, just like the biggest mama bear, advocated for me through and through. And my grandma Mimi, she would save every spelling test, even if the score was 0. When I was 18, we all climbed Half Dome together. And I remember when that climb started to feel challenging and hard, my Mimi would just remind me, "Randy B, you got this." And after high school, I traveled and I decided to receive my associate's degree in what my family refers to as my degree in summer camp, but it's enough for leadership. And after that, I had a job as a domestic violence counselor for teenagers. And I remember one day going in to the school that I would pull students out of class to meet with. And I went in and asked the teacher, "Can I please see Sally today?" And she goes, "No, Sally needs to take a test. You can't see her right now." And I just thought to myself, whew, this child hasn't eaten breakfast. She slept in a hotel room last night. There is no way she can take a test today. And it was moments like that that I knew I needed to go to college and become a teacher. And so I did. I moved to Ashland, Oregon, and I attended S.O.U. And college was really hard. A lot of late night studying, late afternoons in the S.O.U. tutoring lab, and a huge investment in flashcards. But I did it. And I received my bachelor's in education and my master's in teaching. And the year I graduated with my master's degree, there was a job posting. 2nd, 3rd grade teacher at John Muir Outdoor School. Dream job. Dream job. And I remember after my interview, I walked down to the fountain in Lithia Park and I threw a penny in. And I made that wish, like, please. I want this job. And I got the job. And my first 2 years teaching, some mornings I would look for the real teacher to show up. Like, this is not real. This is happening. This is my life. I have the view of Grizzly Peak from my windows and all the classic books on my bookshelves and sharpened pencils in the wooden boxes that my brother built for me. And I was living the dream. And then April 2020, I receive an email and the headline reads, "School closure." I wasn't sure if that meant an extra week of spring break or just until June. And around June, teachers tend to start to see this dim light at the end of the tunnel. And that April, that light went out, and I wasn't sure how I was going to make it to June, how we all were going to make it to June. And we made it to June, and I thought, like, okay, we did that. We can't start the school year like that. There's no way. We did it. And that summer was full of social distancing and happy hours on Zoom with my family. And the anticipation of what the school year would begin like. And I remember the end of August receiving news of distance learning, Zoom school, each and every day. And on that first day of school, a fire raged through our town, taking home some of my best friends, putting fear of evacuations into my students. It also brought a community together, holding each other, feeding each other, showing care for one another. And on our first day of school, it brought Zoom expectations and the learning curve of your camera is not on mute. And those first few months, I would walk up my ladder teach in my small little loft that I couldn't even stand in. And I would log on, and my students would log on. And I learned about the 3 Zoom learners. One, the one who always wants to show you their dog and cat. Second, the one who never realizes their camera's not on mute. And third, the one who's always eating. And it also brought talks of metrics and vaccines. And could we go back in person? Could we make it work? And that spring brought one of the most important people in my life, a diagnosis that would end hers, my grandma Mimi. Mimi would tell strangers on the street that I was a teacher. She was so proud. And in our last moments together, she says, "Randy B, you are the cream of the crop. Don't ever forget how hard you worked to get where you are. You got this." And that next week, I saw my students in person for the first time in 365 days. Masked, distanced, tape around their desks, but we were together in person. And we made it to June. And that summer brought healing. I moved into my 3rd classroom in 3 years. And we received the email that we would start the year in person, distanced, masked, but together. And this year, some days my students wear hard hats to construct nouns. Some mornings they work at Starbucks Cafe. Some afternoons we read at camp, read some more. I have a seating chart. And we're together in person. And when things start to feel challenging, I remember last summer when I climbed Half Dome. And I was climbing down the cables and I slipped. And I asked the man behind me for a minute. Just give me a minute. I need to gather myself. And I whispered to myself, "You're brave. You're strong. You were a teacher in 2020, you can do anything." And the man behind me goes, "You're a teacher?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "We are too. And we got this. We got this." Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Andy. Our next teller is Emil Cruz Garcia. He was born in Talent, raised mostly here in Ashland. He travels often in the event industry, and while he's home, he enjoys disc golf and spending time with his father. Big hand for Emil.
I spent this Easter in a way I've never done before. I was surrounded by Disney and Sesame Street characters, Jimmy Fallon, the President, First Lady, and a lot of Secret Service. I get contracted to fly out to events and execute all the planning that goes into it. The first time I got to be involved in something like that was when I was in high school. I was in the Wilderness Charter School here, and we planned an 18-day backpacking trip, and everything went wrong. I lost my boot in the river on the first day. I had early signs of hypothermia, and by the fourth day, I woke up to my best friend and tent mate bawling because he had written a letter to his girlfriend breaking up with her. I called our teacher Jim over to convince him that we need to end this trip now. It was dangerous and we were miserable. And so he comes over and he kneels down and he starts listening to me. And halfway through my argument, I get distracted by something over his shoulder, and he looks over and there's his 3.5-year-old child in a raincoat and a little baby. Well, it was a bag of dog food, but that was her baby. And she was having the time of her life, which made it very difficult for me to convince him that we were all in danger. So at that point, Jeremy and I decided we needed to adopt her perspective. And we did that, and the rest of the trip was horrible still. Yet when we were done and we got back to our bus, Jim asked us all if we were willing to do it again, and immediately we answered yes. The adversity we faced, just like always, created so much growth. On September 8th, 2020, I knew that my house had gotten on fire, and the next day when I drove up, I had somewhat of a glitch because something that's permanent in your mind was gone. And when that set in, I honestly had a sense of relief because I didn't have to lift anything and sift through anything. It was just gone. Before I could react and like worry about what my next move was, my support system was already jumping into action with gift cards and a place to stay, and that allowed me to jump into action. And Rogue Foodie Nights had already started. And I started working with them in October, and we had a simple mission, and that was to feed everybody who was affected by the fire. And it was incredible, and it was a logistical nightmare. We had hundreds of restaurants making hot food every single day, and other organizations popped up to be hubs for distribution. And we had a lot of volunteers come in to help distribute the food. And one of these nights I was out on a delivery, and this young nursing student was with me, and as we ended the route, there was a car with a Confederate flag on it. And he asked if I wanted him to deliver that. And I let him know that I made an effort to always deliver this guy's food. And I wanted him to see my brown body with kindness, delivering that food to him. And over the months, we created a friendship. And he's what you would think, big guy, rides a Harley, missing tooth, mullet. And about 2 months before we wrapped up our services, he showed up and he said, "This is my last box of food that I need. Thank you so much for the support. I've found a job, I'm back on my feet, and I can support myself." And it was incredible, because this team of people that came together, that trusted each other to deliver, did every single day. I don't know how we did it sometimes, but we did. So I'm back at the White House, and an event's not an event unless there's weather. So 6 a.m. it starts, and it starts raining, and there's thousands of kids there in their raincoats, having the time of their life, trusting that everything's gonna be okay. And they're there for 3 things: the Easter Bunny, the egg roll, and to get these little wooden eggs that they get handed out at the end of it. And I just remembered Kia and all the trust that goes into all of our daily lives to, like, as a community that we all got to experience over the last 2 years. And I'm just really honored and grateful to have been a part of it. Thank you.
Wow. Pretty amazing. That's why I do this. For the kids. Randy, you can leave it at the back on the table. Thank you, Emil. Thank you for your story. Our next storyteller, Laurel Brown, is mother to an amazing 8-year-old boy. She's a physician assistant at La Clinica. When she's not with her son or working, you can find her on the local pickleball courts. And for Laurel.
So at the height of the pandemic, we all had our PPE on, the N95 mask straps pressing in our chin and our cheeks and our head. The literal weight of some of the protective gowns that we wore, and glove after glove, and washing our hands until our skin cracked. There was fear and isolation and the unknown. We were met with that each day. People really changed, we found, with the pandemic. And as healthcare providers, we were met sometimes with a mistrust and questions or pushback about care ideas of treatment. And this was even with people that we had known for years. And it's just added a layer of stress that hadn't been there before. So we would start our day, and still do, with a huddle with our team. And one of the doctors, he likes to share a dad joke, and one of them he shares, he's like, "So, I got these great shoes from a patient, but I don't know what they laced them with, but I've been tripping all day." So we learned to deal with that stress by sharing stories and laughing and crying. We had stored Nerf guns in our desk, and we'd have spontaneous battles with each other just to blow off steam. The providers, we have this leather-bound book. It's all HIPAA protected, of course, but we'd write outrageous stories, such as a patient that came in who said that her eye hurt, and she said, "Well, so this dog had rolled over and its nipple poked out, but it was disguised as a penis and poked me in the eye." Or my patient that showed up dressed as a vulva for her well woman exam, and I leave the room, she screams, "Best pap ever!" So even with the stress and how taxing this has been for everyone, I know that being a physician assistant in a community clinic especially is what I'm meant to do. So when I was 5, I was driving with my mom in her old beat-up tan VW Bug. The springs in the back seat would press against my legs, and there were rips in the material, and I learned later that there were black widows nesting in there. So we showed up to this tan stucco building, and I had a Hot Wheels car with me. And we were there for hours, and I'd play with that Hot Wheels car on the cold tile floor, and there was these like plastic chairs with the bright metal legs to them. And we would stay there for hours in that welfare office until we got our food stamps. And so after this time, when I was 18, I decided I was going to work at this place called Home of Guiding Hands. And this is a residential facility for people with developmental disabilities. And at the age of 18, I would deal with their health and their medications and respond to their medical emergencies, like seizures or falls, and then intervene with behaviors. And there was a woman named Claudia. She stood about to my chin, and she was nonverbal, and she couldn't communicate. And she would come out of nowhere, and she would come to grab the front of our shirt, scratching her nails all the way down to our clavicle. And she got a good hold on that shirt. She would lift her legs up, and then we would both be on the ground. And then she would grab our hair, digging her nails into the scalp and turning 180 degrees to lock us in. And I learned that most of these behaviors stemmed from not being able to communicate simple wants and needs in life. So I spent month after month working with her and just saying simple words like coffee and hungry and thirsty. And she finally learned those. And Laurel, and she called all the staff Laurel, which I thought was hilarious. And so her behaviors tremendously decreased after that, just by being able to communicate her basic wants. So fast forward, and I am in the exciting world of working as an EMT on an ambulance in San Diego, driving fast, lights and sirens, pumping on chests, shoving airways up people's noses. But the calls that really stuck out to me were the ones about human connection. We responded to a woman who was nearing the end of her life and needed transport to a hospice facility. And so we show up at this old craftsman-style house, and the hospice worker was outside waiting for us. And we go in, and there's no family, no friends around. And there's a beautiful older woman with long silver hair laying in the bed. She's unresponsive, but stable. So we take her out to the ambulance, and the hospice worker is closing up her house, and it's nighttime, so the lights in the back of the ambulance are just glaringly bright. I shut off one of the lights, not knowing what she can sense or hear or feel. And so I have this big metal clunky clipboard, and I'm checking boxes and writing all her patient information. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I focusing on paperwork when there is a person a foot away from me at the end stages of her life? And so I put that clipboard to the side, and I take her left hand in mine, and I say, it's okay, I'm here. And so we show up to the hospice facility, and when we lift her from the gurney into the bed, she's as light as just the weight of the sheet. And so my partner, he takes the gurney back to the ambulance, and I stay with her for a minute. And I hold her hand again and stroke her hair, and I say, it's okay, you can rest. And so she opens her eyes for the first time, and she looks at me, squeezes my hand gently, and smiles slightly. She closes her eyes again, and then a few minutes later, she passed away. And so I decided I wanted to find a way to combine that social work and medicine. And so there I was, grown up with that little girl in the welfare office, wearing the clothes from Goodwill, who knew the pains of hunger, and getting accepted into Stanford University Physician Assistant Program. I got this call from Dr. Carrie Peacock 7.5 years ago, and she said, I heard if anyone is crazy enough to work at this clinic, it's you. Thanks. So I celebrated my 7-year anniversary with La Clinica Birch Grove yesterday. So for those of you that don't know about Birch Grove, we're a primary care clinic, but we do the primary care, but we serve people that are struggling with mental health and substance use disorders. And so, every day is a new day for us. And it's a privilege working with the team that I work with. So each day I scroll through my schedule. Who am I going to see? Who's on the schedule? And then I know there's most likely going to be a call saying, so-and-so's up here, and they're wanting to get off heroin, and they want to know if you can help them. And so I struggle with internally, God, how do I give this person the time that they deserve? And they're here, we need to meet them where they're at, see the patients on the schedule, and also get home to my son at a good time. And I realized we really do need to meet people where they're at. So one patient who I learned to know as a father and a grandfather and just the kindest soul, he had struggled with alcohol for years. and his body was starting to shut down, and I felt like I was fighting for him to fight. And so at one of our visits, his entire family was there. And they're all going through their own raw emotions, and it was like an intervention of sorts. And he sat across from me with his crystal blue eyes, tearing up, and he said, "It's okay for you not to save me." He said, "I've been drinking for years, and as much as I want to stop drinking, I know I won't." And so inside, I thought, God, I'm supposed to heal and care for and do no harm. But he reassured me. He said, he knew what was going on with his body and with his mind, and how that could potentially deteriorate if he continues. And so he says to me, "I want to just come in every couple weeks to see you, and we just visit." Okay, so that's what we did. And I learned more about him and his family, and I told him, I said, "I have this amazing son who's just the absolute joy of my life," and he lit up. He lit up. And so at each visit, he would say, how are you? How's your son doing? Oh, I bought these cars, these little pack of Hot Wheels cars for him, but I forgot him again. And that would repeat for a few visits. He would hug me at the end of the visit, and I would watch him walk down the hallway, barely able to lift his body up off his walker as he'd go make his next appointment. And so after he had missed a few appointments, I learned that he passed away at home. And so about a month later, I find this manila envelope on my desk, and I peel back the metal prongs on that envelope, and inside was a pack of Hot Wheels cars. So I hold it to my chest and I cry. And later I take those Hot Wheels to my son Jeremiah, and I tell him what a wonderful man this was and why these cars were so special. And he was 6 at the time, and he said to me, "Mom, I wish I could have known him to tell him I love him." So as healthcare providers, we want to be trustworthy. We want to create a space where it's safe to come for healing and to be cared for and vulnerable. And our patients are not a room number, they're not a diagnosis. We've all gone through struggles and challenges and journeys that have brought us to become who we are today. And that is why every day I come to work with this incredible team of people with just a privilege to be able to care for and be with the patients that I'm with. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. Some of you may remember the last time we met in February of 2020. It's our 10-year anniversary, and we had love stories of our last story, Dan, Cheryl, and Jackie Albert. And there was a proposal part of that story, if you were there. And you may have heard a little cry kind of in here. I don't know if Jackie's still in here. But yes, in the back corner, they have a baby. That's what happened with them during the pandemic. Good favorite. So, grateful for Jackie and Tatum. And Dan here is going to play for us now. He's got a new banjo album out. Coming out. And so look for it. Talk to him about it. Check with the Ashland Folk Collective about it. We want to support this album. We're so excited. And thank you for being here tonight, Dan. Great.
you guys hear the banjo? So during the pandemic, well, thank you everybody for sharing their stories. It takes a lot of courage to come up with during the pandemic, I started to play Dungeons and Dragons, which has been a really amazing thing, and some disc golf. And Mark mentioned that Jackie and I had a child as well, which is an amazing experience. She was a party animal last night, from around 12 to 2, and then 4 to 4:30, 5 to around 6. So I'm like sleepover-itis up here. So this song is a song that I wrote during the pandemic, and during the social upheaval that was happening during the summer of last year and the year before. And I didn't quite know how to interface with that. I wanted to be an ally to that whole experience, and I donated money to different things, and I thought, well, what can I do? What feels like something that I can say that has value? And so I wrote this song. It's called The New American Flag. Hallelujah, I can hear the people's voice at last. We must resist the hate and violence that plagued our diseased past. To raise the new American flag, American flag. The new American flag, the new American flag, the new American flag, the new American flag. Hallelujah, I can hear the people's voice at last. We must resist the hate and violence that plagued our diseased past. To raise a new American flag, American flag. The new American flag, the new American flag. The new American flag, the new American flag. Hallelujah, I can hear the people's voice at last. We must resist the hate and violence that plagues our diseased past. To raise the new American flag, American flag. The new American flag, the new American flag. The new American flag, the new American flag.
and refreshments. We'll come back with 3 more storytellers to go. I don't know if you're on our mailing list, but you can get on our mailing list at thehearthcommunity.com, thehearthcommunity.com, and it'll pop up, and you can be there to hear about all of our activities. Next week we're doing is it next week or the week after, we're doing a Care for the Caregivers retreat. So we're piloting, working with Rogue Action, Rogue Climate, Coalición Fortaleza, and some organizations from Siskiyou County that are doing fire relief. We're going to try a little 2-day retreat to give some care to these folks and see if we can come up with a way of taking care of those who care for us. We'll be doing a life story retreat later this year. Yeah, it's going to be cool next week. And then we have workshops on the art and craft of storytelling, as well as our 6-month certificate training in community storytelling. And this fall, after 3 years of work, I have a book coming out on all this stuff. So between the listening and the telling, how stories can save us, and I got to talk to an old friend and an antagonizer, Annie Lamott, yesterday. And she's going to host an event in Marin County with the book, and we're going to go on the Hearth tour. Take the book around and try to spread some of what we've been learning here to other parts of the country. But you'll hear more about that in the fall, and you'll hear about it so much that you'll say, how do I unsubscribe from this newsletter? I've tried 3 times, and I've left messages, and it keeps coming at me. That's how we are. Okay, well, before we get started, let's have Dan Giro come up here and, play us another tune here before we go.
It takes a long time to tune a banjo sometimes. It's in tune, that's like the first time that's ever happened. This song I'm going to play, I don't know when I wrote it, maybe 2 years ago. It's a big blur at this point. But imagine for a second that we're all kind of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Even Fable, imagine that you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And you're falling in love for the first time. What it feels like, and how pure that is, and how beautiful that is, and how we can remember how to do that. We can come through that storm of the pandemic, even though we're still kind of in it, and go through it and relearn how to be neighbors and lovers and school bus drivers and all that stuff. It's so easy to fall in love for the very first time. Like the wind and the rain, they celebrate. Hip, hip, hooray. And it's so easy to lose our mind when we fall in love. So we all do it as often as we can find the time. And it's so easy to break a heart for the very first time. Like a bit of fruit or a toxic herb slashed across your tongue. And it's so easy to mend a heart after we fall in love. So we all do it as often as we can if we can find the time. And it's so easy to fall in love for the very first time. Like the wind and the rain, they celebrate. Hip hip, hooray. And it's so easy to lose your mind when we fall in love. So we all do it as often as we can if we can find the time.
Back to the sleepover, Dan. Our next teller, Karen Wheeler-Clay, is the Executive Director of the Jackson County Community Long-Term Recovery Group. She was born in the Bermuda Triangle, and she prides herself on using the social awkwardness her generalized anxiety disorder has blessed her with to create more spaces for people to let their freak flags fly. By showing up as her most authentic and frequently messy self, she works to provide more opportunities for others to shine. She's also a fan of food and your dog. Big hand for Karen.
It's been over a week. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Okay, so I was 3 years old. I was madly in love with this white onesie tutu with white leggings, because it's the 80s, and white ballet shoes. There was a lot of pirouetting and ballet stances and jazz hands and kickball changes. And my ever taller older brothers would just watch me. They would watch me sing and dance, as tone deaf and uncoordinated as I was. And that was 3. I was 9, and it was right after Hurricane Andrew. And my brother Vernon comes to pick me up. Why is he driving my mom's buttercup yellow Nissan Sentra? He doesn't even have his driver's license. This can't possibly be safe. So I buckle myself into the back seat, and he drives me home, and there are cop cars all over our front yard. What could possibly be going on? And so I realized that my mom has called the cops because mental health medications and martinis go way too well together. And so my mom goes on a vacation, and the officers hand my 14-year-old brother a note that says it's okay for him to drive. And so I wonder. And now I'm 21, and in order to make sure that my mom can handle her everyday existence of my brothers going in and out of rehab, and one going into the Navy to avoid a drug charge, and other brother who I don't know, but it involved the cops a lot. I do what I'm told. I'm the baby of the family. I keep my head down. I get my A's. I'm quiet. I try to be unassuming. I laugh when it's appropriate, I guess. But I make sure that I don't take up more space than necessary. And I'm 21, and I'm at this restaurant with my mom on New Year's Eve. We're at our favorite Indian restaurant, and I'm eating my tandoori chicken. And she says, "You have to promise me you won't be mad." And she's done this my whole life. She exacts these promises before you know the context. And I look at her and I go, how can I make a promise when I don't know what I'm keeping? And she says, there's a reason. There's a reason you're so different. You've been asking your whole life, why am I so different from my older brothers? And it's because of my maybe daddy. My maybe daddy, who my entire life growing up, everyone knew was probably my father. And so I am baffled. How has everyone kept this secret from me my entire life? Like, I don't even know my own story. Are you kidding me? The guy I thought was my father, who did a terrible job, did the best job he knew how fathering a child he wasn't certain was his own. And so I'm supposed to keep this secret. And I do. So now I'm 27, and I'm at my internship, wrapping up my grad program. I've graduated. It's the whole hullabaloo. I'm the first kid to go to college, the first kid to graduate from grad school. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna leave my partner because he's kind of a mess. I'm gonna get my life in order. I'm gonna finally figure out what I need. And I get a call. I haven't been able to find mom. I can't find her. I haven't found her for 3 days. I don't know where she is. And I'm like, well, you should call the hospitals. That makes sense. And so my brother Scott calls the hospitals, and he calls me back and he goes, so she's on a hold. And so as I fly back home the next day from Oregon to Michigan, and I'm trying to process, like, so my mom attempted to take her leg. Like, okay, so here I am, I'm cleaning up the mess, and I go upstairs to put my stuff away because I have, like, this luggage that I've taken with me, like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be here, and I find this note. I am tired of being tired. And so I know from the receipts that I am forced to pile through because I am now her healthcare power of attorney. Because fun fact, that suicide attempt turned into a stroke. She went to the Red Lobster. She got herself some Cheddar Bay biscuits. Can we just get a moment for those biscuits? So she gets herself some biscuits. She goes to the Walgreens. She fills 90 days worth of pills, and she goes home and she takes them all. And then she realizes, shit, what did I do? And drives herself to the hospital. So this is my mother. I spend the next 11 months taking care of her. I am taking care of her. I am taking care of a partner who's falling apart. I am making sure that everyone is okay. Everyone must be okay. Gotta make sure they're okay. Keep my head down. Make sure everything's right. I'm balancing the books, I'm paying checks, I'm figuring out where the lawyers go, what is this? Languages I didn't know how to speak. I had just spent 2 years getting a degree in public health. So I knew the system was messed up. I didn't know what it was actually like to go through it until that moment. So I eke my way forward. And she gets to a point where she's stabilized, and I, in my infinite wisdom, follow that stupid man all the way back to Oregon. Left the boy, kept the state. And so I am back here, and I spend a decade in public health and community development. I know the ins and outs of all of this stuff that makes your life a living hell. But I'm quiet about it. I know the data, I know the inequities, I know how our decisions in these closed rooms have impacts that ripple far and wide. I am part of the center of a storm that no one really addresses. And still I keep my head down, and I just keep quiet, and I make sure people are comfortable. And so, on September 1st of 2020, I have lost all concept of space and time. And I decided I'm gonna run a mile every day to make sure that I can reconnect with space and time. On September 3rd, I take a flying Linda on a flat road on a clear day. I smash my bracelet, I mess up my knee, I'm like calling and texting all my nurse friends, like, does this look appropriate? You should have someone look at that. And then on September 8th, I am in a meeting with all of these people who are at the center of this storm that is public health and the crisis we are in. And we're talking about how do we come back and talk about 20 years, the consequences of today's decisions, and the real dividends that happen in 20 years. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna meet on Thursday, we're talking about family resilience, it's gonna be great, see y'all then. I think there's like a fire at the dog park. And that's when everything becomes germane. On September 12th, I am called in to coordinate social services at a scale I have not been responsible for to date. And I am dumbfounded by the people that step forward into those spaces. The people that show up with nothing and still give. The gentleman who tells me with his wife next to him that they're in their 70s and they've lost everything, including their cats. Who then turns around and hands money to the father who's just showed up and said, I bought an RV on Craigslist. It's full of drug paraphernalia. I have no money left. I can't put my kids in that. I don't know how I'm gonna get to work tomorrow. And so this older couple just gives him money. And I watch these acts of kindness again and again and again, and I am struck with the realization that we do not need to be alone on our worst day. We are not special. My aha moment is I am a basic bitch. That means I am not alone. And you are too. And so I continue this life of being professional, talk connector, being like, you should talk to this person, you should talk to this person, you know this person, do this, do that, da da da. And I am going and I am going and I am going, and I don't stop, because if I stop, I will collapse. And then I do. And I take a big, long 3 weeks just to stare at my ceiling. Thank God I still have a ceiling. I am so fortunate. And so when I come back from my nap, when I come back from being rested, I realize we have two ends of this equation we must take care of. We must tend to our survivors, and we must tend to our workforce. We cannot move forward without that. And so I continue to bring people together to this messy table that I set that is socially awkward and drops F-bombs in the middle of Zoom meetings. And people keep coming. And then the very well-branded and gorgeously appointed jackal turd decides it wants to hire an executive director, and someone who's dumber than I am says you should apply. She's over there, you all know her well. And I do. What the hell have I gotten myself into? But you know what? I'm not alone. None of us are alone because we keep showing up. We make the messy choices. We invite people in who we feel diametrically opposed to because at the end of it, we need each other so much more than we think we do. And so, this table is messy, but you are not alone.
Thank you, Karen. Our next teller, Lucas Wedeman, is bilingual humanitarian aid worker for the Rogue Action Center. He's focused on supporting and stabilizing our community affected by the Alameda fire.
Yeah, Lucas!
I'm sorry. Thank you. So, my very first day volunteering at the Talent Maker City fire relief site, it was about 3 weeks after the fire had blown through. As I'm walking up to the site, one half of the street is completely destroyed, melted buildings, rubble, and the other half of the street is this congregation of canopies that are lining this parking lot. There's like all these people running around, and there's these tables lined with fresh food, non-perishable food, clothing, hygiene products, hot meals, and it was all to be given away to anyone fire affected that needed it. And I was entranced. Being the only bilingual volunteer there that day, I was completely overwhelmed and inundated with these Latino families that were distraught, sad, destroyed, like their homes. And having to reassure them that everything's going to be okay, that you don't lose hope. We're here to help. It was really tough. And so this silver Nissan drove up, and this family got out of the car really slow, as most of them did, kind of cautious and curious of who we were. This man gets out of the car, followed by his wife, and she's holding one young daughter, and another little older is holding onto her leg. And I go up to this man, and he's like, "What is this? What's going on? I don't have anything. Please help. I don't know what's going on." And I look at him and say, "David, we're here to help. Please take whatever you can. We are no questions asked. This is all for you." And I could see his body language just ease ever so slightly. Maybe just knowing that someone was saying that they can help. And so we go through and get all of his little things that could possibly make his life easier at that moment. And his wife comes, they get all their stuff, they get it all together, and they drive away. And I'm left with this overwhelming sense of fear and sadness for my community, but also this sense of accomplishment and fulfillment that really spoke to something deeper in me. April 22nd, 1995, I was born to a Chilean mother in Santiago, Chile. I was with her for about 3 days before I was given up for adoption. I was in an orphanage until about a year old. Adopted to a very loving American family right outside of DC, suburbs of, in Virginia, suburbs of DC, and a very affluent white neighborhood. My parents, Nick and Julie, gave me every opportunity that I could ask for. I was a really outgoing little kid. I loved soccer and playing with my friends. Even like first grade, the parent-teacher conference. Lucas is talking too much to his friends and not paying enough attention in class. That carried through for sure. I lived for my friends. I would do anything for them. I was a family that I chose. And seeking out all these relationships might, like if I had enough people around me that cared about me, that loved me, that maybe I'd feel better. Maybe I'd feel more important and I'd feel okay. Doing everything with my friends. I ended up smoking weed with my friends at around age 16. I got caught by my parents. And it was the end of the world. I was ruining every opportunity given to me. I was ruining my life. I was headed towards a ditch or something, I don't know. But so we scheduled a family therapy session the next day. So we drove about 45 minutes, maybe that same afternoon, to a therapist in Alexandria, Virginia. Sitting in this really thick wooden chair, and this guy had terrible lighting in his office. If you're listening to this, you have terrible lighting. Really thick green curtains and really thin green carpet. So I'm sitting in this chair across from my mom and the therapist, and we're trying to figure out what's going on, what's so wrong, why I'm messing up. And it gets told to me in some hope to give me some closure about my adoption. That my mom was the janitor of a high school in Chile, family in Chile. Mom was the janitor, my dad was the principal of a high school. And the pregnancy, the conception, was not by my mother's consent. And, I know everything's not black and white now, but 16-year-old Lucas, he was a rape baby. And I internalized all of that. I was a sin. My existence was sinful. I was even more undeserving of all these opportunities and gifts and love. I was not the person I wanted to be, and I hated myself. Bottled that deep down. Never wanted to talk about that ever again. And I let it fester. I find myself at age 21 having been kicked out of college, having been kicked out of parties. I had no friends, no money, no job. I failed educationally, socially, economically, spiritually. And I was not the man I wanted to be at all. I completely cut out trying to go to school, completely cut out so many relationships. I get a job on a cannabis farm and start paying my own bills and feeding myself. Getting some self-worth back. I fall in love. My girlfriend and I moved to Talent, and fires sweep through. So the RAC, Rogue Action Center, and Rogue Climate, S.O.U. Healthy, we had this shop front at the shops at Exit 24 in Phoenix. And it was a physical location for fire-affected community members to come. And we had navigation resources on the right side as you walk in. There's shelves down the middle with food, bread, bananas, everything. And clothing in the back, bedding in the back. And as I'm walking around with these Latino families, these Latino mothers, and with their kids, their daughters on their hips, day after day of doing this, and I absolutely love it. It dawns on me that as I'm holding this mother's hand, this could be my birth mother that I'm helping right now, that I never got a chance to help and support. Never got a chance to meet, and this work speaks to me deep in my soul. I'm good at it. I feel accomplished. I'm helping people. job, helping this community, it fills me up. It fills these voids that I didn't even know how to touch, how to grasp. September 1st, 2021. My now wife gives birth to my beautiful, gorgeous baby daughter. And holding her in my arms. Telling her that she will never be given away. And that she will always be loved and cared for. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you to my friends and my family and my community for giving me the chance to be the man that I want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you. Our last teller tonight, Samantha Watson. She and her partner Jesse moved 8 times before they finally found their permanent home here in Southern Oregon about 3 years ago. Samantha serves as the community health manager at Oregon Care. She loves music and the theater, and she couldn't imagine a life without either. On the weekends, you can find her either mowing the lawn or doing projects around the house, playing referee to her 2 amazingly spirited small humans, Parker and Landon. Big hand for Samantha.
So it was this past fall, and I walked into Road Food Unites. Jackson Care Connect was partnering to show appreciation and thanks to our providers and our community-based organizations who'd been on the front lines for the last 2 years, working hard, and especially during that surge in the fall. And I remember seeing these boxes, rows of boxes lined up perfectly, and I was there to pack them. And I was so excited. I was wearing a unicorn onesie. That's a different story. And I remember talking to Wendy, and she was telling me how to pack these boxes. And so we needed to have all of the labels spacing out just right. And when the recipients opened the boxes, we wanted them to see all of these beautiful, locally sourced goodies that were inside for them. And I thought to myself, like, I was made for this moment. Like, I had a lifetime to prepare me for packing these perfect boxes, and it was the most satisfying experience. And I came back many times to do it, because in those moments, as I'm lining up those labels, it was perfect, and I had control. When outside, the world felt like it was falling apart, and I had control over nothing, and in those moments, it was perfection. And what I thought about was that lifetime that led me and prepared me for those moments. And I thought back to when I was a kid. My parents divorced when I was a toddler. My mom lived in California, and I grew up with my dad and my brother in New York. My dad was in the theater, which meant that most of the time we were struggling financially. We were on food stamps and had my cavities filled at the dental school. But my parents co-parented beautifully from across the country. And it was important to them that we had a life full of rich experiences and culture. My dad was an incredible dad. He was loving, and he was challenging. He was hard on my brother and I, especially academically. And I remember I came home from school one day, and I had this test that I had gotten a 97% on, and I was so proud to show him. And I remember he looked at me and he asked me, well, why didn't you get 100? And I didn't have an answer, because remember, I'm still proud about this 97%. And he said, well, maybe you didn't study hard enough. And the rest of that conversation I have taken with me my entire life. So fast forward many years, I'm living in Los Angeles. I just graduated college. And I have this vision that I had from childhood about what success looked like as an adult. And don't ask me where it came from. I couldn't pinpoint it, but for me, it was having a closet lined with suits and stilettos. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I knew exactly how I wanted to look doing it. So I left that house every day, and I was perfectly accessorized. My hair was always done, and I'd wear my high heels and my suits. And it was my first job out of college. I was working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and I landed in the entertainment division, serving entertainment clients. And I was on call because delivering cars to important people is a really important job. And I remember getting a phone call. We had delivered a car out to an actor in a semi-remote location where they were filming. They'd driven the car for a couple of days, and they wanted to return it for a different car because they didn't like the way the material of the seats felt on their skin when they were driving it. And I remember I'm searching around in this remote location for this perfect car for this actor. And at the end of the day, I remember feeling so frustrated. And I was talking to my mom and telling her about this experience. And I asked myself, what am I doing? At the end of the day, like, is this really what matters? Is this meaningful? And then my mom said something much more poignant than the conversation I had with my dad that I'll never forget. She said, you know what, Sammy? You don't have to love what you do, but you should at least really, really like it. And I knew in that moment that I needed to do something different. And so it wasn't long after I was talking with a friend. He was a procurement transplant coordinator for an organ procurement organization. A lot of fancy words for organ donation. And he said, you know what, there's this position open, and it's in hospital development, and I think you'd be perfect for it. And it was teaching people about organ, eye, and tissue donation. It was developing these beautiful plans to maximize donation. And it was going on site, and it was fixing these donor cases and making them perfect when everything was going wrong. And I think you're the person for this. And so I took the job, and I'm in orientation, and they're telling me about the national waiting list that has 108,000 people waiting for life-saving organs. And then they told me that 18 to 20 of them die every single day not receiving one. And I fell in love with the mission of organ donation. And I spent 10 years, the next 10 years of my life, dedicated to it. They'd say, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle, and it was a lifestyle. I was 10 weeks into my orientation, and my dad died. And I remember the trauma of experiencing the death of someone that I cared so deeply for. And I spent so many years in that job trying to make the experience of death perfect for the people, for the me's sitting in those hospital chairs losing somebody they loved. And then of course, I also spent those 10 years trying to save people's lives, people who were waiting on that transplant waiting list. I facilitated countless donor cases in that decade, even one of an old boyfriend who had died by suicide. And I remember getting the call that night, a couple of hours after he died, and feeling the shock and the sadness, and then the grief set in. And then a few hours later, I had to get up and do my job because his wife called and said, I need you to make him a donor because you know it's what he would have wanted. And so I had to pick up the phone and I had to call our team, and we had to call the coroner and get release. And I asked my team to play Bob Marley in the OR when they recovered his beautiful gifts because I knew that it's what he would have wanted and it probably would have made him laugh. It was probably the most meaningful thing I'd ever done in my entire life, doing that job. If I wasn't in the OR wearing scrubs, I got to do it in suits and stilettos, and it was like this childhood dream had come true. But then there were nights, many, many nights that I sat in my car in a hospital parking lot and I cried because saving the life of a transplant recipient meant that there was another family suffering and they were losing somebody they loved. And it didn't matter how hard I tried to make it perfect because not every single family found a sense of comfort and purpose from the death of their loved one and their donation. And not every person who needed a life-saving organ got that transplant the next morning. And in fact, a lot of them didn't wake up at all. And at that time, there were now 117,000 people waiting for life-saving organs, 10 years into this striving for perfection. And I was tired. I was tired of this lifestyle. I was on maternity leave with our second son. I had spent 2 decades coming to Southern Oregon with my husband, visiting family. And this time it was different. I fell in love with the Rogue Valley. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the mountains, maybe it was the landscape, the seasons. Maybe it was watching my son, my toddler, running around outside of my in-laws' house in Eagle Point and experiencing nature and experiencing the world in a way in which I knew he would never be able to experience in Los Angeles. And I remember driving away from that trip, and I started crying this ugly cry. Like if anyone's cried that ugly cry, your face is distorting in these really unattractive ways, and you're sobbing, and like your body is heaving. And I turned to my husband and I said, you know what? This is home. And we need to come back here, and this is the life that I want. And 5 months later, we left everything. We left everything in a storage unit. I left my job, and we showed up in Southern Oregon without jobs, with our children at least. We brought them with us. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to continue serving people. And I was so fortunate to get a job with Jackson Care Connect as a community health manager. And I got to keep serving people, but in a way that I felt was much less traumatic than my last job. And so I was getting to know my community, I was getting to know members, I was meeting our partners, and then the pandemic hit. And then I had to learn how to do my job in community from behind a computer screen. And we figured it out. We got creative, and then a few months later, the fires hit. We had more than 3,400 Medicaid members who lived in the fire-affected areas. And to this day, I still have no idea how many of them actually lost their homes. But we knew that we had to get out there, and we had to do something, and we had to help these folks. And I remember showing up to the Jackson County Expo with Karen and a lot of other folks on the front lines. And we were getting folks connected to just all of the basic things. Phones. People didn't have medication that had burned down in the fires. People didn't have homes. We housed hundreds of fire survivors for months after those fires. And at the end of the day, there were times that I felt that really familiar feeling, and I sat in my car at the Jackson County Expo and I'd cry. Because it didn't matter how hard we tried, we still couldn't help everybody. We couldn't help everybody put all of those pieces back together. I couldn't set up that box with those perfectly lined labels and close it up and check it off my list and be done with that task. And I remember one day at the expo, I saw this chalk drawing and it said brighter days ahead. And sitting with that grief of mine for the loss that my community experienced, I was reminded that there was so much beauty in all of these folks, all of these partners coming together and serving this community. And what was even more beautiful was the resiliency of these folks who lost everything, and still they had hope for brighter days ahead. Things are a little different now. They're not as hard as they were in those first few months after the fire, but there's still so many families who are displaced, so many families still trying to put the pieces back together. And I struggle still with not being able to fix everything. And there are some nights after I put my children to bed that I seek out some of that perfection and that sense of control. And I might straighten up the kitchen, I might organize something, anything. And then there are days that I'm just really, really tired, and I pour a glass of wine and I pass out on the couch. So we've been at home 2 years doing this from behind computer screens, and we go back to the office on Monday. And I'm so excited. It's not mandatory for anyone until September, but I'm going in full time because I need this. And my sister-in-law asked me a couple of weeks ago, she said, "Sammy, are you excited to go back into the office and start wearing heels again?" And I said, "You know what, Stacy? I actually stopped wearing heels a couple of years ago, and I transitioned to loafers and Oxfords. Because if there's one thing many things I've learned over the last couple of years, but one of the things is that this messy and imperfect world is a lot easier to navigate in a pair of flats." And then one of the other things that I'm really working on is just showing up. And showing up and giving 100%. And it's not always going to lead to perfection. And I have this sign above my desk that says, "Let whatever you do today be enough." And so today, I remind myself, and I'm reminding everybody here, that whatever you did today, if you gave 100%, even if it wasn't perfect, it was enough. Thank you.
Can we give a big hand to all of our storytellers tonight? They worked so hard. You know, one of the things I hoped tonight was that we might feel the humanity of those people who cared for us. The bus driver, Daniel mentioned, the person who delivers our mail, the teachers, the people who make our food, the people who clean up in the restaurants and do the dishes in the back, the garbage keepers, the people who do all the recycling for us, all these folks who have lives and stories like you've heard tonight, who are living out their own story, trying to bring their heart forward, trying to transform suffering into hope. And all of us have that capacity, and we feel ourselves seeking to heal what's been missing inside of us, looking for Gabriella to hold in our arms, that new life, looking where we mail the Hot Wheels to make sure a little boy who we'll never meet knows that we care for them. We're those people who look for the white shoes with the white tutu and the white tights so we can dance. We're the people who are looking for a flag that we've never seen. But if enough of us get together, maybe we could make it. We're trying to create a place where children can find eggs and maybe fall in love for the first time with this world. We're trying to be those people who stare at screens of 25 nervous parents and whisper to ourselves, "You're the captain of this ship. Show no weakness. You got this." We're trying to find a way to discover our wise heart, a way to take all the confusion and tension and pressures of this time and through some sort of internal alchemy, give ourselves the strength to reach out and hold hands with others and do this together. Together. That's medicine. That's what we know. And this wisdom waits within each one of us, with each one of us. And so I hope tonight we'll go forward a little kinder, a little softer, a little more ready to open the door for someone or to give someone slack when they're having a bad day, that we'll be willing to look in the crystal blue eyes of that man across the way and give him a smile and accept him just as he is. I want to close tonight by having our little quartet come up and sing us home. And then if you're on our mailing list, we're still, things are a little wonky, but eventually we will hopefully get together maybe in the fall, in September's. But I'm grateful we got together tonight. Thank you for showing up.
Wow, we are I'm so full with so many stories right now and just so overcome with the courage and the vulnerability and so inspired, very, very moved. And I can safely imagine, I think, that just about every body and spirit in this room is likely feeling similar in that holding of what we've just come through together. I am a big advocate of using music as a tool rather than necessarily a performance piece, but for thousands of years across the world we used music as a tool for times potentially like these, where we're holding a lot of emotion and story. And so we've chosen a couple songs here. This is a little mashup. Many of you might recognize these two traditional spirituals that we'll put together. And what I would like to invite you to do is participate. And this, could be just humming. You could get up and move your body. It would be really good to take what we're holding right now and actually collectively move it and feel our connection in that way. So we'll start slow and we'll kind of groove this thing out. But I do invite you to stand up and move or just connect with your body in a way that might not just be stationary sitting, which we've done for a while here in our total presence and receptivity of stories. I have to tell you, my attention never wavered, from any person. I was just like, so yeah, let's do this together. This is, soon I will be done with the troubles of the world and wade in the water. I'm going to start it slow and just give you a little dose here of what this is going to sound like for you. What's our note again? It's like soon. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, gonna lay my burden down. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, gonna lay my burden
Use this space. Can we give them a hand? And your cheer crew right now. Your cheer crew is coming in to take our chairs away. So grab your stuff and we're going to go outside. These students can get back to their study and take the chairs away. So we don't have to do it this time.